Okay, so in this video we're going to have a look at working out the surface area and the volume of spheres. Now the question that you can see on the screen is obviously a hemisphere, so we're going to build up to having a look at how to work out the surface area of a hemisphere as well, but we're going to start by just having a look at the normal surface area and volume of a sphere. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start off by having a look at the surface area of a sphere. Now for this topic you are going to need a calculator because we are going to be using pi and we're going to be typing things into multiple decimal places. So grab your calculator if you haven't already and let's start having a look at this topic. So this first question says work out the surface area of the sphere and give your answer to 2 decimal places. Now again, this is quite a nice one, similar to that when we are working out the surface area and volume of cones. We are actually given the formula, and you can see both the formulas we're going to be looking at are already on the screen. Now we're going to be looking at the surface area of a sphere, which is 4 pi r squared. So all you actually have to do is be able to type this in. So this is quite a nice topic. So 4 pi r squared, not forgetting, means 4 times pi times the radius squared, and the radius is that distance from the centre of the sphere to the outside, which is shown to us in the diagram. And in this case the radius is 6. So all we actually have to do is plug all the pieces. So we can do 4 multiplied by pi, and then multiply that by the 6 squared, or which is the radius squared. So if we type that into a calculator, and obviously you need to know how to find your pi button, so normally that is down the bottom, you have to press shift first to get it if you are using a Casio like me, and then you can turn your answer into a decimal by pressing that S to D button as well. So if we type all of that in, we get the answer 452.3893421, and then you just need to read the question very carefully because it's going to tell you how it wants it rounding, and in this case it was 2 decimal places. So we'll chop that after the 8 after the second decimal, and then we just want to round that, so that would be 452, and that's going to round up to 0.39. Now this is looking at a surface area, so again read the question carefully. We're looking at centimetres and we are working out an area here, so it'd be centimetres squared. And there we go, that's how we work out the surface area of a sphere. So it's quite nice because we are given the formula. All you have to do is plug the pieces into your calculator in the right places and you will get your answer. And obviously not being very careful that you round how the question has asked you to round it. So there we go, that's how you're going to do that. Let's have a look at a question for you to have a go at. Okay, so here's your question. So just like I said, be careful putting those pieces into the calculator, make sure you read the units carefully, and then rounding your answer at the end. So pause the video there, have a go at this one, and we'll go over the answer in a sec. Okay, so we are going to work out the surface area, so we are using our surface area formula. So we're going to do 4 times pi times the radius squared, so times 8.5 squared. Now if we type that in, let's see what we get. So 4 times pi times 8.5 squared, and that gives us a final answer when we convert that to a decimal as 907 point, and we get 9202769. Now again we just need to round that, so it's 2 decimal places, so after the 2, and it's a 0 afterwards, so that's nice rounding. We get 907.92. The question this time was in metres, it was 8.5 metres. So I would give my units as metres squared. And there we go, that is the surface area of the sphere. Right, okay, so let's have a look at working out the volume. Okay, so when it comes to volume, we've got a different formula. Again, it's given to us, so we've got the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi r cubed. So again, you need to know how to use your fraction button so that you can type in 4/3. If you don't have a fraction button because you're using a different calculator, then you can do 4 divided by 3 and use it from there. So for this one here, we obviously need the radius as well, and we're going to be cubing that, so you need to know where your cubed button is on your calculator. But again, if you don't have the cube button, you can just times the radius by itself 3 times. So in this question, we're going to be rounding to 2 decimal places, we're finding the volume, and the radius is 6. So if we plug the pieces in, we've got 4/3, and we're going to multiply that by pi, and we're going to multiply that by the radius cubed, so that'd be 6 cubed. Now again, if you don't have your cubed button, you can just type times 6 times 6 times 6, and that'll do the same thing. So 4/3 times pi times 6 to the power of 3, And again, turning that into a decimal gives me a final answer of 904.7786842. Now again, reading the question because it wants it to 2 decimal places. So after the second decimal there, and we're going to write that final answer as 904.78. The units are centimetres. This time we're looking at a volume, so it's centimetre cubed. And there we go, there's our volume of the sphere. So again, quite nice and easy. You just need to know how to find your fraction button and your cubed button, because you've got some slightly different bits to type in when you are using the volume formula instead. Okay, so let's have a question for you to have a go at. Okay, so a very similar question here. Again, you need to just watch out for the units, but pause the video there, have a go at this question. We'll give the answer in a sec. Okay, so we've got 4/3. So it's 4/3 multiplied by pi, and then multiplied by the radius squared, the radius cubed, which is 8.5 cubed. So again, typing that into the calculator, 4/3 times pi times 8.5 cubed, and then turning that into a decimal gives us quite a large number. We get 2,572.440785. And again, we've just got to round that to 2 decimal places. So chop it after the 4, and then write our final answer, which is 2,572.44. It's in metres, so metres cubed as it's a volume. And there we go, there's our final answer. So that's how you work out the surface area and the volume of a sphere. As we mentioned at the start, we are going to now have a look at working out with a hemisphere, and we're going to look at the surface area of a hemisphere. So let's have a look at that now. Okay, so this says work out the surface area of the hemisphere and give your answer to 2 decimal places. Now if we're going to work out the surface area of the hemisphere, bearing in mind if this was volume of a hemisphere, it would be nice and simple. You would just work out the volume and then you would just divide your answer by 2. But when you're working out the surface area, it's a little bit more complex, because we're not just looking at half of the surface area of the full sphere, if it was a full sphere, but we are also having to include the surface just here, which is a circle. And the area of a circle, let's not forget, is pi r squared. So we've got another formula we're going to need if we are looking at the surface area of a hemisphere. So we can work out both these pieces, but we can start by looking at the circle. So to work out the circle, and if we just label this as the circle, we're going to do pi r squared, which is pi times 8 squared. So pi times 8 squared, you can work that out on the calculator, and that comes out as 201.0619298. I'm going to leave that full answer there as well, because when we add that to the remaining surface area around the outside, we don't want to get any rounding errors before our final answer. So now on to the curved surface area, okay, the curved part around the outside, so I'll label this as the curved. Now there are 2 ways that you could do this. Either you take the original formula, which we know is 4 pi r squared, and you work that out and divide it by 2. Or you can actually just divide the formula by 2. So what I could actually do is just take 4 pi r squared, divide that by 2, and instead we get the formula 2 pi r squared. And that is absolutely fine for you to use as well. Okay, so that might just save you a little bit of time in terms of the process, because instead of using the formula and then halving your answer, you're just going to straight away get half of that answer. So if we use that formula instead, as it is half of a sphere, then we, instead of doing 4 pi r squared, we're going to do 2 times pi times 8 squared. And if we type that in, let's see what we get. 2 times pi times 8 squared, and we get the answer 402.1238597. And there we go. And that is the curved part of the hemisphere. Now obviously we are looking at the overall surface area. So we want to take both of those pieces there, the 201 and the 402, and add them both together. And if we add them both together, we're going to get to a final answer. So if we write that working out down, we've got, and let's just write this down just below, we've got the 201.06 with a few more decimals, and we're going to add that onto the 402 number, which is 0.12 with a few more decimals, and let's see what we get when we add them together. So I've got the 402 already on my calculator, so I'm just going to add the 201.0619 603.298, and I get a final answer there of 603.1857895. There we go, and that is my final answer. Again, just looking at the question, because it says round it to 2 decimal places, so I just want to chop that after the second decimal, which is after the 8. So 5 afterwards, so it is going to round up. So my final answer, and I'm going to have to write this at the top, is going to be 603.19. Now we're looking at surface area, it's in centimetres, so we would say centimetres squared. And there we go, there is our final answer for the surface area of a hemisphere. Right, okay, so before we finish, I've got one question for you to have a go at, so let's have a look at that one now. Okay, so here's your question, very similar to the one we just looked at, so pause the video there, have a go at this one, and we'll go over the answer in a sec. Okay, so we are going to first work out the area of the circle. So the area of the circle, we're going to do pi times the radius squared, so times 7 squared. And if we work that out, let's see what we get. Pi times 7 squared gives us a final answer of 153.93804. So that is part of our answer there. Now we also want to work out the curved part, and again I'm going to use 2 pi r squared. And if we type that in, we're going to have 2 times pi times 7 squared. And if we work that out, 2 times pi times 7 squared, we get an answer that is 307.8760,801. And there we go, there's our 2 pieces. So now all we have to do is add them together. So again, let's just write that down. We've got 153.93804, and we're going to add that to the 307.8760,801. And if we add those both together, and again I've already got the 307, so adding 153.93804. And then that's also very annoying when you type it in wrong, so let's type that in again, 307.8760,801, add 153.93804, double check it to make sure you've typed it in correctly, and there we go, we've got a final answer of 461.8141201, and we just want to round that to get our final answer, so I'll chop that after the 8, after the 1 there, and we get a final answer of 461.81, and that is in centimetres, so centimetres squared. And there we go, that is the surface area of our hemisphere. So there we go, that's how you work out the volume and the surface area of a sphere, and also the surface area of a hemisphere there. So I hope you found that useful and helpful. Don't forget to check out the rest of the series in the description, and I will see you for the next video.